Well, Mavuno began in 2005 with an impossible dream. Several of us had this belief that a church could actually be started that would be relevant to people who thought church was irrelevant, people who hated church, people who actually didn't feel accepted by the church. And armed with this very impossible dream, several of us set out to see whether it would be possible with God's help. And we came together in prayer, sent out by Nairobi Chapel, myself, Pastor Linda Ochola, Pastor Simon Bevy, and others who were part of that team. And incredibly began this vision. I mean, we prayed about it. We set out and did our research. We got to know the people we wanted to reach. And ultimately we began. And when we began this vision, I mean, we had no idea the kinds of results we would find. To our amazement, as we sought to just preach God's word in relevant ways, to package the message in ways that would be acceptable and understandable to our generation, we found that so many people loved the message. People understood it. People gravitated towards it. To our amazement, people who hadn't been in church for years actually decided to start coming and making this their home church. We found a reputation as a church for people who did not feel accepted by the church. That's how Mavuno actually began. I had many unchurched friends, and to my amazement, many of them began to come to this church and to make it their home. A couple of years later, it became obvious to us that we would need to find another location, one that would allow even more people to find access to this church, because where we were was quite inaccessible then. And then began a miracle story. It was going to cost us 30 million shillings. Consider that in light of the fact that there were about only 400 people, mostly young, mostly on their first or second jobs, and the monies were astronomical. But we were still driven by this fact that we believed that God was calling the church to be relevant and to reach this next generation, and actually by reaching them to transform the continent that we are part of. To our amazement, as people gave sacrificially to this, we found that not only were we able to raise the resources, but we were able to move to Bellevue, which has been our home for the last few years. And many people have discovered Jesus there. So many people have testimonies about their lives that have been transformed. People have come into church without hope. People who've been living lives that are far from God. People who've been feeling hopeless because of the situations they're in. And they found that not only have they found transformation for themselves, but they in turn have become centers of transformation to those around them. Their families have been transformed. Their society, their communities have been transformed because of the transformation in their lives. Many people have a Mavuno story that is incredible to listen. I've been so privileged to be part of what God has been doing over the last 4 years here at Bellevue. And I could tell you story after story of people whose lives have been transformed. Some of you who are watching this actually could testify that your own lives have been transformed because of what God has been doing here at Mavuno. Surely we've been in the middle of a miracle. And somehow along the journey, God began to show us exactly what we must be about. We always say at Mavuno that our mission is turning ordinary people into fearless influencers of society. That we are a church that is meant to reach those who would not go to church. The majority youth population in this continent, people who find church completely irrelevant to their lives. That this is our calling, to reach those people, to take them through a process of transformation as they encounter God's word, to help them understand their purpose, and to show them how they in turn are change agents for society. And this is what Mavuno has been doing the last few years. This is what our history has been about. Throughout the process, God has also given us the opportunity to go into different nations. Currently, Mavuno is in at least 6 different countries. Not only Germany in Europe, but 5 other countries here in Africa. And in every one of those places, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're seeing many people who found church irrelevant coming to Jesus, discovering their purpose and becoming change agents for their society. And this is what we believe that Mavuno is supposed to be, a church that actually changes the world one person at a time. And this is why our Count Me In initiative is so important. It's not just about land, but it's really about the business of transforming our continent and of transforming this world. Most of you are aware of the facts that sometime at the beginning of 2012 that we discovered, or Mavuno found, a piece of land about 30 acres in Lolongo area. It's an incredible piece of land. It would just be exactly what we felt God was calling us to occupy. in order to be a center, a place where we could find a center for the reformation of nations. This is what we've called it many times. And many people at Mavuno have stepped out in faith. Many have made faith pledges towards this. Many have given sacrificially towards this. And I am so amazed at seeing God's people rally around this vision. I have no doubt that God is setting the stage for some incredible miracles to give us this land that will be at the center of everything that He desires to see this church become for the sake of the nations around us. And so this is why I want to make this appeal to you. I really believe that this is God's land, and I believe that God is behind us. And the evidence so far is that God has really come alongside us as we seek to own this land. And I want to also say this, we've done this before. A few years ago, 400 people took a step of faith, and God dramatically gave them resources beyond their imagination to own and to be able to enter and engage in Bellevue. And that is why so many people in this city have experienced the transformation that they have experienced. So this is not something new for us. I believe now, as we stand on the verge of this new phase of our history, that God is calling on every single one of us to stand up and to be counted. Over the last few months, many different ones of you have already pledged towards making this dream a reality. And if you're one of those who've pledged, my encouragement to you is begin to ask God, to trust God, and to bring in gifts towards this. Take steps of faith. Don't even wait for the time you have the whole amount that you've pledged. It's a faith pledge. So take those steps of faith and begin to bring in whatever God puts into your hands towards the vision. For those of you who haven't pledged, I want to encourage you that this is a time for you to stand up and for your faith to be counted. This is the time for you to say, count me in. And I'm going to challenge you, if you haven't yet, fill out one of those pledge cards and be part of this journey that will bring transformation to the lives of many. Don't miss out on what God is doing in our generation. And then finally, for all of us, I want to call on us to pray. This thing cannot be done by power or by might, but only by the Spirit of God. And already we've seen God answering dramatically our prayer. My prayer for us is that God will take us to the next level in our faith, in our prayer life as a church, as we trust Him for the impossible. And I believe that every one of us is going to have a story to tell our children and our grandchildren as we see what God does for us together, as we together are counted in Mavuno 3.0. If you'd like to know more about what's going on with Count Me In, you'd like more details about how to give, or you just want to read about faith stories of people who've taken this step of faith, well, just log on to our website and go to www.mavunochurch.org/countmein, and you'll find a blog there that has incredible stories and also frequently asked questions about this whole Count Me In exercise.